in places like the Philippines, if you're getting $1,000 Social Security check, you're probably going to be able to cover most of your daily expenses. You're probably not going to be able to buy health insurance. It's super expensive. And so what do those people do? The whole idea of retirement is not really about age. It's about what you need to do to be free. Do I stay in one place a long time? And other people like me, they like to move around and experience new cultures. You can define your life. And I mean from the bottom, the ground up.
The system is set up for people to like serve a purpose that is someone else's purpose. And
Yes.
it's almost like
Well
we're
said.
disposable. I think that this is a way for people to break out of that system and say, you know what, I don't want to wait until I retire to live my life. Well, welcome, Dan. I know you don't always disclose your location, but where are you approximately right now?
I'm in the Philippines and I'm in a mountain city, so I'm in a cool area. We've been in the Philippines for about 5 months on and off, and we've really enjoyed this visit. And right now we're just in a mountain area where it's cool. And so it's a nice change because it can get warm in the Philippines.
Definitely. Before we get into that, take us back to the beginning. For people who don't know you, you have a YouTube channel with all types of videos on how to help people retire abroad, the best places to go. But what were you doing before you had this YouTube channel? What was your life like? And how long ago was it that you were living a traditional lifestyle?
So I was sitting at my desk in 2006, late, working away, and the phone rang, and someone said to me, it turned out to be a headhunter. She said, "Would you be interested in moving to India for 2 years?" And I'd always been curious about India, but more than that, I'd always dreamed about traveling the world. And I thought if I was in that side of the world for 2 years and I got the right job and they perceived me as valuable, I would be able to get enough vacation time so I could actually travel around that part of the world. So I moved to India a few months later in 2007, and I was there about almost 3 years, and I had 22 1 week vacations off. I had every seventh week off, and I'd go to the airport on Friday, and I would fly somewhere around Asia or Europe or wherever, and I would spend the weekend, the 5 days, and then the next weekend, and then I'd be back at my desk. And so I visited, I don't know, around 22, 25 countries in those 2.5 years. And so I was at the time, this is 2007, I would have been almost 47. And I didn't expect to get that sort of travel in my life until, retirement age. And so it was really a great experience.
That's amazing. Had you done any international travel before you got that job offer?
Oh yeah. I've dreamt about and thought about travel pretty much all year long, every year. For me, it was like you work as, all your work year was waiting to go on your vacation, but it was a traditional American life I was living where I had a week or two. And so but I don't know how many countries I'd only been to maybe 8 or 10 countries before I went to India. So, but I was living in Oregon at the time that the headhunter called me.
Did you have any reservations at all about taking that job in India? Because I've talked with other expats that, well, they eventually became expats, but at the beginning, they were kind of afraid or hesitant about taking an assignment for 1 or 2 or 3 years in a country that they had never been to.
I'm an unusual traveler in that I don't expect to bring my comforts with me all over the world. I'm somebody that adapts quite easily to the environment around me. And I knew India would be a challenge, and it was maybe for the first 6 months, but that never crossed my mind that would stop me from enjoying that travel and being that part of the world. And I have through work, I have many Indian friends, and I love Indian food. I'm a vegetarian, and so I love the food in India and around Southeast Asia. I love and so I knew there'd be some challenges, but for me, it wasn't really that hard being in India, honestly.
Mm-hmm. And which city were you in there?
I was in New Delhi.
Okay.
Um, it's actually quite a fun city to be in. I mean, there's great nightlife there, great restaurants. Has a, it's a very, very old culture. So they have temples, and and Indian people are very welcoming to Westerners. And so they're very friendly and easy to get along with. And the people I worked with were lovely. So it really turned out to be a great experience.
And you mentioned that there were some challenges with adjusting during those first 6 months. I've also found that, especially the first country that you move to, it can take a longer adjustment period. Did you feel like you went through that curve of cultural adjustment where everything is great at the beginning, or either you're in shock or everything's completely wonderful, and then it's kind of like reality hits you? And did you ever have questions about if you had made the right decision, and how did you work through those and adjust to the daily life there?
So the adjustments for me were, when you first go to a new country, you don't understand how much you take for granted. Just, where everything is, like where to get, like simple things like coffee and the shampoo you like, and just simple things that you know how to do in your life. When you show up in a new country, if it's not like an Americanized country, you're going to have to work through all that. Like, where do I get socks and shoes and underwear, and where do I get groceries? Like, everything has to be refigured out. And so that is what I meant by 6 months. But once you realize that you don't need all that stuff you thought you needed, and there's other stuff over here you can use instead, and now you have a few friends and you know where to go to dinner. And once you've got over that hump, and you redefine yourself in some ways, you leave part of yourself behind, but you become this new person that is multicultural, and you just sort of internalize that. And once you've got over that hump, then it's smooth sailing. And then, like you just said, it's really your first country. After that first one, then it's sort of that memory happens when you go into a new country. You're like, oh yeah, I got upset about this last time. Like, the plugs are wrong, and I don't know, I have to get bottled water, and all this kind of stuff that's different. All of that stuff is just, it's no sweat off your back anymore. You just go through those same processes you learned. And I think there's some people, I think, that have a harder time traveling than others. And it's hard to really put my finger on what that is, but I think it's just people that are expecting, their expectations are that everything should be the same. They want, even though they're in a new country, they want it to be like where they were. And it does make a difference whether you're traveling alone or with other people, and whether or not you're kind of a laid back person and take life, with a grain of salt, or whether you're wound up tight and you want to control everything around you. There's just different types, and they all have to deal with it however they are.
Did you feel like you were a Vagabond Buddha before you moved to India, or do you think that is a philosophy of your life and a mindset that evolved through travel?
I'm a Buddhist, and so for me, it's not a belief system. It's about being present in the present moment. And so if you think about what a grievance is, it doesn't matter if you're mad at a person or the food set down in front of you or whatever it is. You're not accepting the way things are. What you're doing is you're remembering how you want them to be, and you're comparing them to how they are. And it's kind of like an internal grievance you have. And I don't know, as a Buddhist, kind of Zen-minded, I'm more present to where I am. I'm not so much present to how I want it to be.
Do you think that those are related? Like, where do you see that sense of internal freedom and peace aligning with your decision to slow travel?
That's a really good question. And so one of the things I've observed after I left India in 2010, I quit my job, and I offered to be a consultant and work remotely with my laptop, half time, half pay. And they were paying me a good living, but I didn't want to work that many hours anymore. And it was more than enough money than I needed to travel the world. So because I was going to places around the world that were cheaper to live, it was geo arbitrage. And I was getting to know the world, like where are the places that are interesting. And what I noticed was that when you go to a new place, when you're slow traveling, versus if you're in your old country and you just stay in that country and you stay on that job and you go back and forth to work, and so when you're in a pattern in your life and you're doing it over and over and over again, maybe on the weekend you go to a different place for dinner, or maybe you go to a party or you go on a vacation or whatever. But those patterns, when you're involved in those patterns all the time, your mind goes on autopilot, if you know what I mean. Like, you probably remember driving to work at some point where you're like, you remember getting in the car and now you're at work. Your body drove you to work. It's like an autopilot thing. And so if you go on autopilot in your life, what happens is your mind will start thinking about all these other things. And if you will, a busy mind is really what takes you out of your environment, your present moment awareness. And so, but when you start traveling, everything's new. Like, where am I going to get my coffee? Where am I going to sleep tonight? What am I going to eat? Where do I take a bus to the next place? Or like, everything is new. And so you don't have any time to get stuck in your mind and work over this problem. What did he mean? What did she mean? What's real? Oh, they couldn't have meant that. Why are they? So your mind doesn't, it has to be present, because it's survival. When you're a slow traveler, you're engaged in your life. And that's what's interesting about it. And what that does is it plugs you into the world, not just to solve problems, but also like you're aware all the time. So if you walk by a building that's like a beautiful building, you look up and go, wow, that's a beautiful building. I wonder what it is. And when you get back to your computer, like, what is that building? And so you're not like running around in your mind so much. You're in the world. You're of the world. And it's a peaceful way to be. And that's what slow travel gives you. It's not guaranteed, but it opens that door for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely can relate to that. And I think anyone who's traveled can attest to how you really need to be in the moment. All that drama and the office politics and things like that just tends to dissolve once you get on the plane, and especially once you land in another place. So for people who haven't seen your channel before, I love your definition of like what a vagabond Buddha is. A vagabond Buddha is a citizen of the world in the material sense and a boundless, undefined awareness in the spiritual sense. That's so beautiful. What is your mission here in creating Vagabond Buddha, your YouTube channel? What is it that you want for people?
Well, there's two missions, really. One is to open a door to geographic freedom for people. For centuries, people have lived and died within 1 or 2 miles of where they were born. And now we live in a time where, because of because of rapid transit and because of common language growing around the world, and because of the internet and translation tools, and we live in a time where you can choose to stay in one spot your whole life. But we also live in this time where that's not the only choice you can make. You can define your life, and I mean from the bottom, the ground up. And one of the things you have a choice about is, what your life means, and whether it's stationary, whether you want to raise a family or not, whether you want to have a regular job, or whether you want to work remotely and travel, or it's all stuff that you can define. And so what the first part of Vagabond Buddha is really about just teaching people that the whole idea of retirement is not really about age. It's about what you need to do to be free. And you can be free where you grew up in the same community by doing something like you teach, be a digital nomad and stay in one place. You make up a business and you do it online, and you generate wealth, and you sit in your house and you figure out some value you can give to the world, and you define your career, and you decide whether you're going to sit in one place or move around, and you're going to decide, do I stay in one place a long time? Some people are very, they like to nest, and other people like me, they like to move around and experience new cultures. And so I don't know, that's the geographical and the monetary part of it. And then the second part is just the spirituality. I think for me, I'm not I'm not an evangelist. Like I don't even tell people I'm a Buddhist unless they ask me. But the other part of the business is just sharing that possibility that you don't have to be stuck in your mind. You can live in the present moment. And that idea is not really so much in the West. It is in younger people, but not people my age so much. And so that's the second part of it. And I just kind of casually go about that. I have a second channel called Vagabond Buddha where I teach, just have thoughts when they occur, that kind of thing. And for most Westerners, it'll probably sound really strange, but it's kind of Asian, Eastern philosophy mixed with a man, an older man from the West who's experiencing it, talking about it in English. Maybe it'll open some doors for people that don't know about it, they're curious about it. So those are the two facets of the business. The reason it's called Vagabond is the travel part, and Buddha to me is about finding joy in your life by being present to what's happening in your life rather than to whatever your mind is complaining about it in any given.
Yeah, and I think ultimately that's what people want. They want to be happy. They want to have freedom and they want to live life on their own terms, but they also want to feel like that sense of belonging in the world and find their place in the world and also meet like-minded people along the way. So it is really quite simple. Sometimes we can make it well, not all of us, but at least, me, or sometimes we make it more complicated than it needs to be. But then there's also this sense of overwhelm and uncertainty that can sometimes come from having unlimited freedom, where it's like, oh, wow, you look at a world map or you spin the globe and you're like, where do I go? And that can sometimes be unnerving for people too, to go from like the rat race hamster wheel to you can do anything you want, you can be anything you want, you can live anywhere you want. And that can prevent people from taking action. So in all of the thousands of people that you've talked to and the hundreds of people in your membership community, what have you found are some of the things that hold people back from retiring in other countries or living the life that they want? And how have you helped them overcome that?
Wow, that's a really good question. And actually, that's such a fundamental question. It actually applies to everything in life, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Because
I didn't. Oh,
people
go ahead.
dream about what they want their life to be, don't they? Not everyone, but I would say many people do. They don't just sit where they are and solve it, one problem after another. They have some idea of who they are and where they want to go and what they want to be. And some people action on that and some don't. So it's a very interesting question. And I don't know that I've solved that part of the equation, to be honest with you. I think that I think some of it comes through inspiration. When they watch people like you and me traveling around the world, and they see we're kind of normal. We're not, we don't really take ourselves too seriously. We just have fun and we just live our life, in a meaningful way, and we try to help other people. I think maybe they're inspired by that in some respects, but I'm not sure. Other than to blaze the path in front of them, that might be maybe the only contribution I'm making in that regard. I have it. It's funny because I have that on a list of videos to make, and I don't have a title for it yet, but it'll be something like "How do I get off the couch?" Something like
Uh-huh.
that. And I've been thinking about it for a few months. So it's funny that you ask about that. And I've had subscribers and friends and people that I meet through my business that have asked that question multiple times.
Sometimes I think people can't put their finger on what it is that's holding them back, or it might be more than one thing. It's kind of the same as asking someone like, what do you want? Or what would make you happy? And they can say, well, I know what I don't want, and I don't want this and this and this, or I know what I don't like, and it's that. But it's like this clarity over and this focus over what it is exactly, like what is the thing, is hard to put your finger on. And sometimes I think it's because it's not just one thing, and there's not even one end place to get to. Like it really is like all about the journey. And as you found in traveling for decades and going to how many countries, 67 countries. So I think even if you've been to every country in the world, like you realize you're not done, quote unquote, yet. And it's about like how you grow as a person as you're doing that. And you don't know exactly what was that turning point in your life, but it was like all these little things that you tried that come to make one thing. So I guess let's bring it down from, I didn't know we were going to go so spiritual in this conversation, so big picture, but like after, kind of defining like this vision for what's possible for people, let's bring it down into the practical, like day-to-day stuff. People are always interested in how much it costs to go somewhere. You have videos on like, how cheap is it to retire in different places and how to travel when you're broke. Practically speaking, like what is the amount of money that they need in their savings or coming in as like a remote job income or a retirement income stream for them to be able to traipse around the world?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because there's a lot of factors that go into that. For example, if somebody is, they were born and raised, let's say in the U.S., and they've only lived in the U.S. and they're used to living the U.S. lifestyle. They have a car, they have a house. Well, not everyone has a house, but they typically have a car. They have car insurance. They have a house, or they're renting a house. They have the gasoline they're buying and food and all these different things. And in the US, their cost of living is generally highly related to what their income is. And so there are people that live in the US that are making very little money and figuring out one crazy way or another to not starve to death. And then there are people that are living on 10 or 20,000, 50,000. I have a friend that's, sky's the limit. He makes so much money, he can spend whatever he wants. And so depending on who you're taking out of, say, the US and where you're putting them and how much they want to recreate their life in the US, that'll tell them kind of what their budget is. And I don't know if you know this or not, but the US, because of what's happened financially over the last 15 to 20 years, people reaching retirement age now, many of them have lost their pensions. And they have less, and they haven't made as much over the last whatever number of years. And so they're coming to retirement age, and they may only have like a $1,500 check from Social Security that they're going to get. And they may have a little bit in a 401k, or they may have a house they can sell. And so someone who's going to retire in the USA and they're going to have to live on $1,500 a month, there's a certain kind of life that they're going to have.
Especially with inflation.
Yeah, with inflation kicking now. Now, Social Security has COLAs, cost of living increases, but still, $1,500 is not a lot of money in the U.S. And so, if someone's like that, what they want to know is, where can I go where my rent's not $1,200 or $1,800? Where can I go where my rent's $500 or $600 or $300 or $800? And what are those countries like? I mean, what do they look like? And so my business is not really for people that are millionaires. They're retiring with a $4,000 Social Security check. They have 2 rental properties, and my business is I'm looking at the people that are trying to figure out how to have a nice retirement, and they don't have what they thought they would have. And so I try to tell them, okay, your rent's this, your utilities are this, your phone's that, internet's this. Here's what plates, entrees cost. Here's what, if you buy groceries, they're going to cost. And they can look at those numbers and they go, those are the base costs. But what else do they want? Do they want health insurance? Do they want to own a car? I don't own a car. I take public transportation. I ride the bus. I take a taxi once in a while. I ride tricycles, which are like taxis, but they're 3-wheel taxis, like tuk-tuks.
The tuk-tuks, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm not saying that I live on the bottom that you can live at. Like, I don't live totally like a local, but I try to keep my expenses down when I'm traveling around, just so that I have a vision for those people of what it might cost. So what I like to say is that in places like like the Philippines, if you're getting $1,000 Social Security check, you're probably going to be able to cover most of your daily expenses. You're probably not going to be able to buy health insurance. So what you need, because health insurance around the world is going to cost $100 or $200, or older people are going to be excluded from cancer coverage. You probably have done some reading on that. I think I saw on your webpage. And when in some parts of the world, when you get past a certain age, you can't even get insurance. Or if you get it, it has all these exclusions.
Expensive. Yeah.
It's super expensive. And so what do those people do? And so I interview expats and talk to them about it. And some of them just pay for their Medicare in the US. And they think if something bad happens to me, I'll fly back to the US. It's not a best case solution. But some people, they've lived their life right. They're healthy. They do the best they can to keep their body in good shape. Some are not. And so they have to do that analysis themselves. And so typically around most of the retire cheap in paradise places around the world, you can get by on like $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500, depending on whether you want to live like you did in the US, which you're not going to do for $1,500, or you're willing to live in local kind of housing and eat in local kind of restaurants and live like the locals. I mean, like, for example, in the Philippines now, most families are living around $500 or $600. I don't know if it's most or not, but it's not unusual at all to you to meet somebody in the Philippines that is a Filipino and say, what is your monthly expenses? $500, $600, $700, $800. And so if you come and you have $1,000 or $1,500, you're already living a step above the locals, but you're not living a US lifestyle. Other people come to places like the Philippines or Mexico and they have more money. So they want to rent a place that looks like their house in the US. And so they often go into gated communities and they eat in like Italian and Western style restaurants at every meal, and they buy a car, and that's going to cost more. That's going to cost $2,500, $3,500. If you go to somewhere like Costa Rica and you want to live that lifestyle, it might cost you $6,000 or $8,000 a month. So it's really a broad question you're asking, and it really takes personal involvement to answer it. And the one thing no one should ever do is buy a plane ticket, fly a one-way plane ticket to a country and go there with only their Social Security of $1,000 a month and think that they're going to make that transition. No, you have to do an exploratory visit. You have to go see, where am I going to live? What are the rents at this house? What are the utility bills? Let me see them. Where am I going to shop? What are the groceries? What am I going to do if I get sick? Do I have some savings for emergency? And so the fact that I'm working, that my reports are for people that are trying to keep their expenses down, mean that there's some risk for them, and they're going to have to really think about what those risks are, and is it really worth moving to a foreign country, or is it better to stay in the US? And that's a really hard calculus, because they may have to move somewhere where in the US that they're not that interested in, where rents are only whatever, $800 or $1,000 a month, or $600, or they might have to share, like get a house with friends and share the rooms, and kind of like what you did in college or whatever. So, or do you want to get like a little house in the provinces in the Philippines, have your privacy again, your rent's only $250 or $300, you're shopping in the local market for another few hundred a month, you have your cell phone that's both your hotspot and your cell phone, and you're praying to God that you don't get sick. And if you do, you better have some money to fly home to the US or to pay the hospital. And also you should know that the hospitals around the world, outside the US, maybe outside of Europe also, some of Europe, of course, will even pay for a foreigner that's hurt if they're visiting there. Like a friend of mine broke her arm in Portugal, and they fixed her arm in the hospital, even though she didn't have insurance.
Oh, wow.
But a lot of the world around, they don't have like a safety net. So if you get sick and you don't have money to pay to the hospital to stabilize you before you fly home, you're in big trouble. So this is all stuff you have to think about. But these are the same kind of people that have to think about this same stuff, whether they live in the US or overseas, except when they hit 65. Then hopefully they're getting their Medicare or whatever. So this is not an easy question to answer. And mostly what I like to do is just show them. I show them, like, this place, here's what a place looks like for $300 a month. Here's what a $2 meal looks like. And they have to do that calculus themselves. So I would say that the typical expat, though, that's not who they are. The typical expat has made more money most of their life. They've had a passport, they've traveled internationally, and they're paying $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month rent. And when inside their house, it looks almost like the US. Maybe it has more problems, or it's hard to solve problems because they don't know who to call for electricity or this or that, to solve an internal problem in the house. But they're trying to make their existence like the US. So their cost of living is going to be higher, $1,500, $2,000, $2,500. And so you're asking a question that is going to be very dependent on what their income is, what their lifestyle was, and whether or not they can adjust. And they need to do an exploratory visit before they move somewhere, mostly.
Yeah, perfect. Because people that are listening are coming from all different backgrounds. Some of them are reliant on that Social Security check from whichever country they're from. Some of them have extra passive income coming in from investments and pensions and things like that. So you gave the perfect answer. And as you were talking, it just reminded me of how frustrating it is to really just observe this system that we're in. Of course, it depends on every country, but to look at the trajectory, just using the US, for example, because we're both from the US, but this trajectory of going to school and then going to work and waiting for retirement to really live your life. And then, oh, when you get to retirement, you have to live on this small amount of money that you've been, paying into the Social Security system your whole life. And then now that doesn't cover enough really for you to have your rent and food in the US. And so then you have to go back to living like a college student, and then you're running out of time. Like you're rapidly running out of time, like years of life to live the way you want. And it's like the system is set up for people to fail in a way, or not necessarily fail, but just the system is set up for people to like serve a purpose that is someone else's purpose. Yes. And it's almost like we're disposable. And then it's like, okay, on to the next generation. Like, and that is so, that's so infuriating. And so I think that this is a way for people to break out of that system and say, you know what, I don't want to wait until I retire to live my life. And I don't want to, like, this is not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, this Social Security system. And so you need to take life into your own hands. And that's where that other income aspect comes in. So can you talk a little bit about the ways that you and some of your clients and subscribers are able to generate another online income that can duplicate and triple and quadruple the amount of money that people might have thought that they had to rely on in the retirement system?
Yeah, sure. So when I was in India in 2010, I read the book called The 4-Hour Workweek, which I'm sure you've read, and all digital. It's like the digital nomad commercial Bible, let's call it that. And so I read that book, and I realized that I was a consultant, and I was now working half time, half pay, but I had to go to work in the morning, or I couldn't take a day off, or I had to work to get that money. And I read about just some of the ideas in the book and started learning about, and so starting in around 2010, I started taking different courses. Like, how do you make money online? Like, it seemed like magic to me. Like, some people are able to do magic, where I'm going to pull a quarter from behind your ear, and other people weren't. And I was like, what's going on? It seemed like magic to me. So I started taking all these different courses, and I didn't really have any success with any of them. And so I started looking around. I learned about affiliate marketing and all these different things. And I tried different things, took courses, and really didn't have any luck with it. And then I heard about this concept, the information business, where there's something Now, old people like me, we know things, okay? We've lived a long life, and so we know things. And other people need to find out how to do those things. And so what the information business is you share life experience with people. And how do you do it? I choose to put up YouTube videos. And what do I know something about? I lived all over the world and enjoyed the world for all those years. And so I know all the cool spots. I knew what the cost, what an entree cost, and what was the rent here and there. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to just start putting up reports. And so we just show people what it's like to live around the world as a slow traveler. Anyway, I created this course called the Hobby Income Course, where if you're someone like me and you've had something in your life that's interesting that people want to know about, maybe it's your hobby, maybe it's your job you did during your working years, whatever it is, you have a base set of knowledge that other people need to know. Plus, that's an evolving concept, whatever your hobby is. It could be muscle cars or fly fishing or sewing or whatever. Like there's a girl that does
crochet.
And she does these videos where all you're doing is looking down at the crochet, and that's her way she gets people interested, and people love to do that. I guess it's calming and interesting and fun. So anyway, so you basically give away a bunch of free information on some social media. I choose YouTube because YouTube pays me every month that people watch my videos. And then they'll eventually get used to me and they'll find out I have a webpage. They end up over there. They see all these reports that teach them how to do what I do. And eventually they might want to buy a membership. And the memberships are $9 a month or a $99 one-time fee. And I also have the course there that if they want to start a hobby and they can just, I have all the steps to start their WordPress page, how to use their email, create their email list, and how to do a landing page. It's all there and what the tools are and stuff. And I give that for free as part of the membership. And for me, it's kind of a fun life. It's this whole second life I have online, and all of that activity and action creates money. And that's the magic where they pull the quarter from behind your ear. And but it's not the scarcity thing. People think the internet is a scarce place where only the first one who got there gets it and no one else can do it. And oh, that's too late for me. It's not how the internet works. It's this massive billions of people on it, and they're from all over the world, and there's a space for everybody. But it's hard work. You have to do the work, really. And that's the bottom line, I think.
From what you said, that's the big takeaway for me, and hopefully for everyone, is that everyone has skills that have value. And the longer you've worked and the longer you've lived, the more knowledge you have and the more value you can contribute. And then that contribution is an exchange of value from the people that you're helping. And so we'll link to your course in the show notes and your membership page and everything. But hopefully this is a good introduction to everyone about who you are, what you do, who you help, and what they can do in their own lives. So thank you so much for coming on Badass Digital Nomads. And for anyone who's watching this video, hop on over to Dan's channel and he's going to interview me.
Yeah, come over and check it out.